We're back with more NFL coverage, and in this one, I'll be covering all of the other developments to occur in Week 14. So to get straight into it, earlier last week, it was detailed that new fields for all 30 teams would essentially be mandated by the NFL, per the article I have here from NFL.com. Quote, the playing surfaces at every NFL stadium will have to meet new enhanced standards set through lab and field testing by the start of the 2028 season. NFL Field Director Nick Pappas detailed the plans for a program on last Thursday, that will provide each team a library of approved and accredited NFL fields before the start of next season. Any new field will immediately have to meet those standards, and all teams will have 2 years to achieve the standards, whether they use a grass or synthetic surface or a hybrid. Most artificial surfaces are replaced every 2 to 3 years, Peppa said, and natural fields can be replaced several times a season. End quote. Now, honestly, I was kind of thinking, okay, was it going to be a specific type of field or not, whether it was grass or turf, because that has been all the rage over the past few years between multiple players from most of the teams in the league coming out and addressing that component of play and how certain preferences might have advantages compared to others that might leave risks for injury and things of that nature. But no, as that says, it could be a grass surface, it could be a synthetic surface, it could be a hybrid of the both of them. No matter what, every single one of them needs to be revamped, and they need to meet some sort of new requirement posed by the NFL regarding standards for how they should be conditioned, mostly. And again, going through the different testing to see, okay, what would work in one of these fields, what may not work for one of these fields. Because no matter what, you are at the end of the day trying to protect the players, as much as you can. I don't know. We just still are in a stage of time where you still got a lot of non-contact injuries going on, no matter whether these players are on the turf or on a grass surface. And at the end of the day, continuing to lose out on that kind of concentration of players on the field is going to hurt in more ways than one. So it's about keeping all of that up. It's safe to say that we know about the obvious culprits, the MetLife stadiums, the FedEx fields, and all of that kind of stuff. But overall, one could argue that, hey, a lot of the current fields in the NFL right now, regardless of the surface they've been in use for a good enough time. And no matter what, no matter how they're consistently replaced, there's going to be some wear and tear there. So why not spend time trying to test new things out now, getting ahead of the curve, and seeing what next steps that in all of these franchises. It's going to affect everybody. But what is it going to take for them to maximize the, viability of these specific structures? As this quote states, Pappas said fields have been tested in labs and on site using two main tools. One is called the Beast, which is a traction testing device that replicates the movements of an NFL player. The other is called a strike impact tester, which helps determine the firmness of each field. End quote. So that adds a little more clarity to it. And honestly, I feel like I've heard, or at least kind of have an idea of what one of them would be. This first one, the Beast, while I haven't explicitly heard of it being mentioned before, there are similar types of devices like that, or maybe this is used for this thing. But in Madden, how they've, over the past few years, gotten different, not just athletes, but also other models for these games to act out different player movements in real time and get a feel for just how realistic they're trying to make some of these things appear as they are played all throughout the world and all over the online space. I feel like something like that is related to what this device does. So it does kind of make sense because, well, people have to be able to move the fuck around on there. You can't have a situation where you just get players completely stuck in one spot, or at the very second they make a cut or a move that might seem normal for their routine, but unsustainable for the field, they get injured. And you don't want that either. So you want to be able to have a field that can keep up with any single kind of motion that these players might give off at, honestly, every single rep. Because a number of different things are going on simultaneously, even in just one single play. And you gotta account for all of that. So we're not even just talking about the skill positions. We're talking about everybody in the trenches, even the players that don't see the field a ton. Just getting a feel for how that would typically operate is going to be important. And then it also comes into play this other one, the Strike Impact Texter, as mentioned in this quote. It's got to be able to hold steady and consistently. Like, you don't need that shit getting fucked up, whether it's natural grass or whether it's turf, immediately, to where you have to constantly fear that the playing surface isn't going to be able to last you for a full season or multiple seasons on end. I mean, this is somewhat unrelated, but think about this. The Lakers in the NBA, even right now, are dealing with the inability to use their NBA Cup sanctioned court because of how their players keep complaining that they are slipping on that surface repeatedly, and how it could be potentially unsafe for them to continue utilizing it. And it's crazy too with that, because they sent this back over to whatever lab. They've tried to rework that out, and it still has the same problem. But that is exactly what the NFL would be trying to avoid here. Like, you don't need that kind of feedback from the players, because it would be warranted at that point. Like, they need to make sure that, this thing holds up as it should for a very long period of time. There are such things, especially when you have different events going on in these stadiums, to where, okay, yeah, sometimes you can take out certain pieces and roll off certain parts of the field, keep it stored somewhere else, and then attach it back when the football team is in town ready to play. That's a different situation. But it's another one entirely to just have it be completely messed up on the first go-round and then have to spend countless weeks, months, maybe even years, depending on how long the process takes, to develop an entirely new surface. And that is essentially what the article is talking about here. Even though natural fields, again, it's grass, that is just going through the process. And there are going to be times where it just grows to be far too much, no matter how consistently you trim it down and make sure that it's getting the proper nutrients on a given day that it would need. So grass is going to be a lot more intensive than I would think the turf would be in terms of having to cycle through that process. But even if that's the case, like, okay, that's fine. That's fair. Just hold up for enough time so that a team can play for a full season, a full slate of potential home games, and be fine without any real resistance in their goal there. Yeah, as this goes on to say, Pappas himself, essentially, as this article states, talks about reducing injury risk and having the proper player feedback along with optimized playability on the surface. All three of those things that I were essentially saying. But again, it all does tie back into the point because, again, when I first heard this, I'm like, okay, are they going to force it to one side or the other in terms of grass or turf? And honestly, per a statement from Dr. Alan Sills and a few other additional remarks of his here, it doesn't really look like that's going to be happening in terms of them switching to full-on grass fields being required or turf. As this quote from him states, the surface is only one driver of these lower extremity injuries. There are a lot of other factors, including player load and previous history and fatigue and positional adaptability in cleats that are worn. So surfaces are a component, but it is a complex equation. And so I'm excited about where we are in the work because I think we'll get away from very crude measurement of artificial here and the grass there. And now we can say for any individual surface, let's look at the biophysical properties of that surface. How might those correlate with injury? And then obviously, how do we optimize them? End quote. Also, essentially, per research from him, there isn't really that much of a difference in any sort of lower extremity injury or concussion that deals with the type of playing surface or any specific sort of turf or grass field. It's a problem that is consistent throughout the NFL. And clearly with some of the latest ones that we've seen, it does not discriminate. So that is not necessarily the thing here. Plus, he brings up a really fair point. Some players, in terms of the workload that they demand over an entire season, sure, there will be times where you have your Ironmen and they hold up just fine, but not every player is built like that. There are some players that, let's just be honest, are injury prone, unfortunately. And there are some players who get weathered down over the course of their careers, taking a number of different hits repeatedly to their lower body, to other core areas of their body that might end up getting hampered over time. And then obviously when you deal with concussions and things like that, repeated shots to the head. That can't always be dictated by the type of playing surface that you're on. Even though, again, FedEx Field and MetLife properly have their reputations as terrible playing surfaces out in front of them right now. And again, the key is really just to take advantage of this opportunity to test it out. If it doesn't work, okay. How, again, in his words, do we optimize this? How do we make it better? So that even though we know that you're not going to, it's not going to be perfect. Injuries are a part of the game. You're not going to completely phase them out. But what has been the goal of the entire player safety initiative through the dynamic kickoffs, through the, banning of certain types of tackles and other penalties that are being enforced, the whole point is to limit their impact on a given season across the board. And that is really all. We could, in fact, if this is correct, see a new playing surface initiated in just a few short months. as this quote states at the end of the article, basically, Pappas also shared plans for the Super Bowl to be held on February 8th at the San Francisco 49ers' home at Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara, California. The field has been growing at a sod farm about 2 hours east of the Bay Area, with Pappas making several visits over the past 18 months to monitor the field. The league will plan to install the field around the third week in January, or later if the 49ers could be hosting playoff games. So that is just one example. Again, 18 months, I'm not sure if that's going to be consistent. Everywhere, I'm no expert. But that's damn near a year and a half, pretty much, of this field being developed before they are now trying to debut this in the Super Bowl, essentially. And I guess there's a plan here, if it holds up, to get this in and set around the third week in January. Of course, with this being in California, even though you have the winter to deal with, I don't think weather would be that much of an issue for them. But of course, they'd have to be careful about that, if that ends up being a factor that could impede their progress here. And also, again, the 49ers, in a tight NFC West right now, could still have a chance to potentially host playoff games. So, of course, you can't interfere with that. And you'd have to wait until they are just completely out of using that surface at the moment to then go on and install this. But once this actually does happen, it could be pretty interesting, and it'd be the perfect time for them in a way. It could go a number of different ways. I remember when the Eagles took on the Chiefs at State Farm Stadium in Arizona. There were multiple mentions there about them trying to get this surface conditioned properly over a series of months. And then you got out onto the field, and while the game itself was fun, there were multiple people who went after just how terrible the playing surface was, about how many just patches of dirt were completely ripped off the surface by cleats, about how a few players did catch themselves slipping on the surface repeatedly, and about just how much of a bang-up job those creators of it ended up doing, even though this was in a dome stadium. This is going to be a little bit of a different situation. This is going to be outdoors. But again, this is on the biggest stage. And not only do you have the whole world watching, essentially, you've seen how massive the Super Bowl audiences in terms of viewership have gotten over the past few years, and honestly, consistently. So this would be a great time for them to get a heavy amount of somewhat reasonable feedback. If it performs well, hey, you're generally going to hear positive things, and frankly, not much from the NFL audience at all. Because at that point, if the playing surface is intact, while notes could be made about it, if you're doing your job like that, that's not something that's going to be talked about. It'll be pretty much the 49ers or any other team in this game playing on a surface that is essentially already set to go without any real problem. And if they do happen to have some miscues with this, then it's like, okay, that feedback might be fair, but now they get a chance after said game to take all that in stride, get right back into redeveloping this field and making these changes to other ones so that they avoid this in the long run. So all in all, it was an interesting report to see last Thursday, but it makes sense from their perspective if they want to continue to initiate. Player safety is a priority. And again, it's not going to completely eradicate the injury. That's just impossible. It's not going to happen. But at the very least, you want to minimize the damage that these players are taking. And really, at the end of the day, it's about controlling what you can control. That's the best possible way to put this. Like, a lot of the injuries that we see, especially with some of what I'll talk about and some of what I had discussed in the last video, like some of that shit is unpredictable. And you can't game plan for that, no matter how hard you try. But at the very least, on the NFL's front, hey, while our players are out there, on our playing surfaces, we're going to do what we can to keep them intact and able to contribute to the overall product in their own distinct ways, while maintaining that they are as safe and secure as possible. Simply put, for a few other developments here before the next massive one, because that would be pretty damn crazy. Jalen Carter, as it was mentioned, would still be out with a shoulder injury, and he's still week to week, so they'll probably reevaluate him again. Like I said in the game, Eagles managed just fine without him, but they will probably want him back down the stretch. I don't think that's a secret at all. Odunze would be out of the Bears game against the Packers with a foot injury, and Sean McVay would travel separate from the team to Arizona as he was dealing with an illness at the time. Hopefully he's recovered from that now. And even with that being the case, it certainly didn't affect Los Angeles at all. So, I mean, hey, man. But the Bengals. And more specifically, just, like, I don't even know what to say about this. When this came through my phone, instantly, I was like, okay, Jermaine Burton got suspended. What the hell did he get suspended for? What could have possibly happened? And then it escalates because just a few hours later, per ESPN, one of the Bengals reporters, and Ben Baby as well, as the quote states here, Jermaine Burton's tumultuous time with the Cincinnati Bengals is officially over. The team waived the 2024 third-round pick on Monday, following the latest dust-up between the wide receiver and the club. Burton did not make the trip to Buffalo for the team's 39-34 loss to the Bills on Sunday. Hours before the game, the team announced that Burton was going to be suspended, which penalizes him with a missed game check. When asked about that suspension Monday afternoon, Bengals coach Zach Taylor announced that Burton would no longer be with the team. End quote. So, like, legitimately, that couldn't have escalated much faster. Jermaine Burton, a player who was kind of drafted in the mid-rounds, essentially, of last year's draft, is now completely off of this Bengals roster. I don't think we still got a clear answer as to exactly what led to this suspension. But with a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing from these few articles here, and with some of the other stuff making their rounds across the internet, it's not been uncommon for him in his time in the NFL. It's not been uncommon for him in his time in college either. And it gets a lot deeper than what we're being told. I don't know. It's unfortunate. Like, when you look at it, as the article goes on to say later, this is the man in Jermaine Burton who had all 14 of his appearances in his NFL career occur just last season. So he has consistently been, as the article also states, essentially a healthy scratch for most of the year. And at that point, you're just wondering what's going on. He's been fine aside from an illness they mentioned here, aside from an ankle injury. Maybe that ankle injury might not have been too much to keep him out. But nevertheless, mostly healthy and just not being counted on. That could be for a multitude of reasons. I would think that, the wide receivers that they have right now are pretty strong. And it feels like in all this time with Burton being out, Yoshi Voss and even Mitchell Tinsley have become more relied upon weapons for this Bengals team. And over time, that just kind of phased Jermaine Burton out. That would be my estimation of it as an outsider looking into the situation. But again, in terms of having all that trust just be cast onto guys that are pretty much in the same situation, and Mitchell Tinsley obviously having a little less experience, it's like, okay, if that's not enough for Burton to get on the field either way, then something more must truly be up here. And geez, like, it was so strange. Like, as they mentioned here, like Joe Burrow and other guys in the locker room were saying that, okay, in his second season, he is making progress in the offseason to become a quality weapon for them in time, and yet that just hasn't happened at all. Between, a few injuries here and there, but again, mostly just coaches' decisions after coaches' decisions after coaches' decisions on a week-to-week basis. And at that point, we really have to get more clarity into what the hell was going on in these practices involving Jermaine Burton at all. What exactly was it? Was he not, attending practice enough? Was he being a disgruntled teammate at times? And granted, I think one of the articles here touched on that. Yes, as the CBS Sports article says, quote, there were also issues regarding Burton's ability to be a dependable teammate. Cincinnati benched him for the team's midseason win over the Raiders during his rookie season after missing practice time. Ahead of the team's season finale against the Steelers, it was announced that Burton wouldn't travel to Pittsburgh with the rest of his teammates due to a coach's decision. End quote. And I feel like we see that all the time. Like we're going after guys like Abdul Carter and Keon Coleman within the past few weeks, missing practice time and getting benched. But clearly those guys have still played and still been trusted to go out there and perform, even if both of their performances this season have not been up to the standard that their GMs, their teammates, their coaches were expecting from them this season. Especially Keon Coleman. Right? So, you, at that point, it's like, damn, if we're seeing that from those couple of guys and a few others, and they're still getting playing time out there, then Jermaine Burton has got to be the most insufferable teammate in the world. At least that's what it's being made out to look like here. The man has not taken a single snap this NFL season. And had missed a few games last year dealing with the same stuff. So, you really, at that point, oh my goodness. Like, if that's the case for him, that's incredibly unfortunate. Because it's yet another situation being marked with a person who, honestly, when Burton was at Alabama. I didn't even know he was a transfer from Georgia initially. But at Alabama, he definitely put on a great amount of talent, good amount of tape to be considered a draft pick for this Bengals team. He's definitely got it within him, and yet, for a number of different reasons, you just can't capitalize off of it. It is always something impeding you. Even this quote from Nick Saban kind of alluded to it. Essentially, as he was working the draft last year, he's going to prop up his guy. Like Saban did, retire at that point, but he coached Jermaine Burton. He had good things to say about his skill set. But this quote right here says it all. The number one thing that he needs to do, and I think emotional maturity is the best way to say it. Do the right things all the time. If he does the right things on the field, he knows the importance of what he has to do on the field. He wants to be a player, that's all he thinks about. But you got to do the right things in your life all the time so that you can do the best things that you can do on the field and be the best that you can be. Yikes. And what's been going on now is just pretty much talking right to that quote as a sort of follow-up. It's aligning almost word for word with that shit. He has the talent. But there are some things in his own personal life, aside from maturity issues, if you want to call it that have gotten in the way as well. He is going, or has dealt at numerous points in his career with a number of different incidents. And no, I don't follow that up talking about this, trying to be any sort of slimy kind of way about it. But you can't address what's been going on with Jermaine Burton without talking about some of this stuff. That's just the truth about this. And as these articles state, at times at Alabama, in fact, one specific incident that both of these articles cite, allegedly, that is the key about this, allegedly, he struck a female Tennessee fan during the aftermath of one of the crazier upsets of the decade, where the Volunteers were able to get the win over the Crimson Tide in that game. And apparently, if that was the case, one thing led to another, and Burton was the proprietor of a truly awful situation there. And he was asked about that at the draft. And again, fair quote from him. He acknowledged his mistake, as this ESPN article states, and he wouldn't allow that to frame him as a person. Fair enough. Like, he had wholesome things to say. He was simply trying to play out his time in the NFL for his mother. Like, those are not things you can come after him for. But even then, between missing all of this time and not taking advantage of the opportunity, and then having other just incidents spiral up. While no charges were filed here, he was named in a police report for 2 different alleged domestic violence incidents in December 2024, as this article states. And then also in January, per the CBS Sports article, he was also accused of assaulting someone, though again, no charges were filed against him. So again, the jury would still be out on whether or not he did do those things. I have genuinely no idea about that. There are probably those who are closer in a circle who might be able to attest to his involvement, potentially or not, in those actions. I can't do that from so far away. But just being exposed to all that consistently, on top of all that, without even being able to contribute much of anything to the team, at some point, Cincinnati might have felt like it was just way too much for them to deal with at that point. Way too much. So, as that ended up being the case, they decided to just let him walk. In fact, Zach Taylor himself, in this quote right here, essentially said that a split was the best option for all parties involved. And maybe a change of scenery is what it would take for Jermaine Burton at the end of the day, in multiple facets. Like, clearly, even if these are allegations or potential incidents of his or not, there's something fundamentally going on that he'll have to turn around in real time on a personal level. I don't think there's any denying that right now. And I mean, it's fair enough, right? This is a man who, let me see. He is, how old? 24 years old. At the end of the day, still fairly young, right? So it's just like you don't have too much more room for error, but we understand you are in a process of learning. So we've got to get that hashed out. And from the lens that I view it, a different team, all around the NFL, when teams are at their healthiest, you have a solid kind of wide receiver pairing for most of the teams in the NFL. I'll say most now. It's definitely shifted around, and honestly, even some of the better wide receivers in the generation are probably on their way out in a few years' time. And maybe one of those kinds of teams could be looking their way. But yeah, I don't know. It's just incredibly unfortunate for Jermaine Burton to be going through all that. I can't sit here and say that it isn't. Just gotta get it together, man. It's as simple as that. He's still got a lot of potential career ahead of him if he cleans that stuff up. And also, again, in terms of just becoming a better teammate, dude, come on, man. Because there are countless other people in your situation who are younger and not getting their opportunities, who are older and not getting their opportunities, who have literally left the NFL, went on to spring leagues, come back to the NFL, and are still trying to search around for their chances. And I understand that can get to a player who truly does believe that they have what it takes to go out there and contribute to a team consistently. But you do not see or even hear all that much. It happens, of course. Maybe that's human nature. But those players are still there doing what? Supporting their teammates. Cheering with them. Trying to, even in other situations, calm them down. Just being positive presences in the locker room, regardless of what their own plate might be. And I think that is one of the fairest things that you can do at the end of the day. Because you would want that same kind of respect when you do go out and get your own opportunity to be out there on the field and make your own mark in your career. You wouldn't want to have it any other way, so why would you try to do that in your position right now? I don't really understand that component of it. But yeah, hopefully that situation just gets better completely. Because this was incredibly weird. And when you have a coach just coming out, keep in mind, a coach who, by and large, just lost his chance at making the fucking playoffs, by the way, for the second straight year in a row. Completely blowing that opportunity out of the water. whenever you have that kind of coach coming out and saying that at that point, yeah, it's much better for everybody if you're just off the team. That is definitely damning. And while he may still go out and do some of the same things that he's been doing at the same time, just take a look at yourself at that point and really do a deep dive into what the hell is going on. And you've got to try to figure it out and dig deep to do so, because there's just something so revealing about that specific quote right there that it's like, oh man, at that point, maybe you do need to reconsider what you are doing out there. If they can go on and freely just say that about you, it's craziness, man. All right, moving on to some, I don't know. The entire AFC North, and we'll get to it in time. To just continue what's been a weird time for that division, it just got some even more freaky shit going on. And it starts here where DK Metcalf, after the game, actually stayed overnight in one of the Baltimore hospitals because, dude, he was dealing with a stomach issue after the game. I think Mike Tomlin came out a few days ago and said that his status may not have been affected by this, but it's like, where the hell did that stem from? And ironically, after he had his best game of the season, he just, why? What kind of logic goes into that? I'd be a bit concerned about that. Hopefully he's all good to go, as the Steelers literally play against the Ravens again this weekend. So they would, never mind that. But they'll definitely have a pivotal matchup against them in a few weeks' time. So you want him healthy for that. Truly, if he could go out and perform that way in the last one. And this is a pivotal junction of the season for the Steelers as it is. Every single game for them matters at this point. Because the AFC North title is very much still on the line. As for T. Higgins, he was also dealing with concussion-like symptoms. You can't make it up. You can't make it up. T. Higgins coming out and having one of his more productive days of the year, I'll say. And again, just through something random that happened in the game, this might have been practice actually, and he's just dealing with this now, so his status could also be in question depending on how the entire protocol process goes for him. Parker Washington would be out with a hip injury for their next matchup. As for a general development in the NFL, per one of the graphics mentioned on an ESPN ticker, this would be the second NFL season with multiple 10-plus game winning streaks by first or second year quarterbacks, as Drake May and Bo Nix in their second seasons, respectively, have done this. Originally, this happened in, I believe, 1984, as Elway and Marino both did that in the same season. So, hey, that's some historical stuff for you there. The Bucs would sign Jason-Pierre Paul to their practice squad. And I'm kind of shocked it didn't happen already. They've needed the defensive help in their trenches for a little bit of time. And given their latest loss, you need to do whatever you can do to protect the slim lead you have in the NFC South. Because again, you do not want to deal with the backlash you will get as an organization if you allow the Panthers to come back and win the whole damn thing. That will be a problem. Trey Hendrickson was placed on IR and is going to undergo core muscle surgery, meaning that he'll be out for the rest of the season. It's terribly unfortunate for the man. And again, this is the shit right here. I guarantee, what the hell did I say when they signed the man to another franchise tag, or at least a short-term deal? That felt like a franchise tag in the moment. Like, you're not retaining him long-term at all, and you are right back in the same position that you were. Even if you want to try to use this Hendrickson injury with him getting a little older and having this be another year where he's down as potential leverage in your favor. No, you still, as a collective defense, need his services out there and have clearly been struggling without him. Now, he can't control himself getting that kind of injury. But this is the shit that he'd have to return to? You are right back in the same spot, where you are now going to have to figure out a way, after legitimately giving T. Higgins and Jamar Chase a shitload of money. Maybe they deserve it, but that's left you cap-strapped. And now you don't have enough to make a move, but you still have to retain a guy in Trey Hendrickson somehow, who is still one of the best defensive ends in the NFL when he is healthy, and has proven that over the past few seasons as a Bengal. He is way too valuable to that franchise, maybe for their own good. And now they might be in a position where they don't have a choice but to let him walk. And I know, again, the main thing for Trey Hendrickson is that he recovers effectively from the injury and gets better from it. That is the main thing. No denying that whatsoever. You don't want to see anybody going through an injury like that. But at the same time, y'all remember how the holdout went. And I know that every single thing that has gone down this season has essentially just left Trey Hendrickson kind of reflecting on that moment in retrospect and thinking, damn, I should have held my ground and I should have left this team when I had the chance. Like, he was in a stalemate for that long, knowing he wasn't getting his worth from this team. And he was very adamant and open about it, even with multiple people coming out and saying that that wasn't even in his nature as a person, to be that vocal in that kind of discontent with a situation where he decided to open out his mouth that consistently about it. But I don't think anybody could blame him. And he was doing a number of things that got right under the Bengals' skin. And it went on for long enough to where they still did their own, again, weak-ass form of caving by giving him a pseudo-franchise tag. Knowing that this one-year deal would still be contingent on you actually performing well as an organization. And the fact that you still haven't doesn't really do anything for Trey Hendrickson. You think that for the second straight year in a row, and again, I don't care what his nature is, you think that this offseason he's going to play the same song and dance with you after seeing the same result play out again. It's not going to happen. For his sake, at this point, I would want to see Trey Hendrickson move elsewhere, to where his talents are actually going to be put to good use on a team that is very serious about at least making a deep playoff run. I don't know about Super Bowl contention, but he deserves that at this point. He really does, because the Bengals have shown him absolutely nothing. They tried to bait him. They tried to play him into a sort of leverage situation in their favor by having this go down. They did. But your stagnation as a franchise tells Trey Hendrickson everything he needs to know about this moving forward. Like, he's already got the leg up on you. Even if you have kind of assumed with the weight of the contract that something like this can happen. Like, come on now. The leverage is still very much in his hands. And he's going to utilize that. And they would be a fool for thinking that he's not going to. Playing cheap with the man the entire time. I mean, it literally took them fighting tooth and nail just to get T. Higgins his deal. And you ended up, I'm not going to say overpaying, but you gave him an exorbitant amount of money only because you were pushed mightily to do so. And again, for them as well, no matter how good Trey Hendrickson clearly is, they can't afford that now. So again, same song, fucking song and dance, and it's going to result in Trey Hendrickson leaving. I can tell you that right now. I wouldn't be surprised anymore. Moving on to a different development here, though. Okay, this is actually just kind of laughable. Because Ben Cleveland, the Ravens guard, would be suspended 3 games for violating the substance abuse policy. My thing is this. One, you can't have players going around and doing that at all. They're going to get after you. Them drug tests are not something that they play around with, right? Like, he had to imagine if he was actually doing this stuff. Like, you knew you weren't going to get away with this shit. So that's the main thing there. And again, credit to them for getting on it. You've not, I know in my lifetime, I have not always seen an offensive lineman be suspended for that kind of thing. My thing is this. Because it's under the entire umbrella. Substance abuse, PEDs, all the like. If Ben Cleveland was actually taking this stuff, if he was actually using these products to enhance his performance, why are the Ravens at where they are at now? If you are playing in a somewhat elevated state to where you perceive that you are playing much better than you actually are, and you are still ass, and your offensive line is still ass, well, how exactly do you play, Ben Cleveland, when you're not off the PEDs? What kind of player are you off the drugs? Just think about that. Just ask yourself that. Looking and hearing that this man was using and abusing substances. And this is him in a apparently improved state as a player? That's nasty work. That's nasty work, man. Like, I don't even know. I don't know what to say about that. The interesting thing to see as well, you know what? Yeah, it's Tom. Because, hey, we've gotten allusions to this, but at this point, it would be important to see, okay, if Ben Cleveland, the elevated Ben Cleveland, is now going to be out on suspension, well, who is the guy that is now coming in? Oh, yeah, it's Andrew Voorhees. Man. Oh, boy. Well, I would, Emory Jones Jr. is still the backup here. Like, honestly, you drafted him recently. Maybe you should give him his opportunity at this point. I don't know. It's not a great situation for them no matter how you look at it, though. And again, this is a man in Ben Cleveland who was using PEDs, playing like this. And the team on that front, when it comes to pass protection, is still ass. So again, in a sober state, what the hell does Ben Cleveland play like? I mean, we see what is going on with some of these other guys in sober states. So, yeah, it still can't be that good. And again, that's a problem. Like, they have too good of a team across the board for this shit. But that weak stuff, yeah, that's gonna do them, man, bro. Cause they gotta get that shit together, man. I'm not gonna lie. Like, come on, bro. You cannot make that shit up if you tried, man. You can't. You just can't. Moving on to a key follow-up. There would be a suspect arrested in the shooting of special teamer Kris Boyd, as a quote from ABC News states. The suspect, 20-year-old Frederick Green, surrendered to police on Monday in the Buffalo area after officers surrounded a house where he had been staying, law enforcement sources told ABC News. Besides attempted murder, Green has been charged with assault and criminal possession of a weapon in connection with the Boyd shooting. End quote. So, I mean, on that alone, at least they ended up finding this person. One could argue that this still might have been a little bit too much time to pass in between point A to point B for them to get the man. But again, they got him. He is not, if he is actually the guy, not going to get away unscathed from this situation completely. And that, above all, is what's most important. True justice at the end of the day in this situation. It is like, it has been good to see that Boyd, despite a brief situation where he had to return to the hospital with other health issues, is doing mostly fine after this. It was still just a situation that just took a lot of people by surprise and caught a lot of people off guard. Like, it happened so suddenly. And to just have to continue to go through this day by day without having anyone at all implicated in this was certainly eating away at somebody out there. So in terms of potential closure, I guess you get one step closer there from this. But the main thing, of course, that would offer even more is that throughout this whole time, yes, they had video evidence. They had a rundown outline of what the situation looked like. But we did not know a motive at all. And it seems like we are potentially getting closer to that too. Quote, prosecutors, the outlet reported, said Boyd was out with Jets linebacker Jamien Sherwood, wide receiver Irvin Charles, and another unnamed person from Texas when a group started to chirp at them about their flashy outfits outside the restaurant before the gunman opened fire. End quote. So, all it seems here, and again, that is really the nature of it, at least how it's being portrayed right now, is just a lot of, potential smack talk, and also a potential setup for, trying to play it up, flatter them a little bit, and then take their possessions away from them, essentially, before this situation would occur. That's not atypical, unfortunately. But now that opens up a different line of questioning. I mean, we're talking about a group here, keep in mind, but you also have one man being approached in terms of actually carrying out this situation. So is this green person a part of that group? Was he acting separately? That is going to be the next step that they have to determine here. And it won't be that long. This USA Today article also states that tomorrow he's due back in court. So it's going to be the start of the process, but it feels like we could find some more information about that eventually. That would be the first thing I kind of understand here. Because, again, you got to look at the words. They, especially when you're dealing with documentation of that kind, they're going to mean everything, and you need to take it literally. So when we're seeing that just one man is being arrested in connection with this situation, and then you have a potential group being outlined here, like, you need to make sure that you have the right person, in that they, again, if they acted alone, okay. But if they did act in tandem with anybody else, you gotta sweep the whole thing clean. You can't leave a stone unturned when it comes to the law. It's as simple as that. And I mean, literally, hell, you just look at this essentially through how they ended up getting them. As this quote from ABC News states, on Monday morning, the U.S. Marshals Task Force surrounded the second-floor apartment in Amherst after briefly considering jumping out a window to allegedly avoid being apprehended. Green surrendered, according to the complaint. End quote. They also say that this all came from a tip that Green was staying in this general area with a car of his girlfriend's being tracked at the same time. Damn. Like, yes, that is a very high tense situation, if we can call it that. But at least he was actually rational about this. In a way. Like, no, you can't condone his actions, potentially, if he is actually found. It's one thing to get him arrested. Now you have to get it in court, right? If he was actually found to be a part of this thing, you can't condone that in him potentially attempting to take Kris Boyd's life, and thankfully failing to do so. But to have yourself be surrounded literally by U.S. Marshals, and then even for a brief second consider jumping out of a window, at least his senses actually came to him. Because come on, bro. Come on, man. We can't be having that go down, man. Like, it's not, I mean, I can't say all that. You know what I'm saying? This potential place, given how a lot of buildings in New York typically are, could have been from relatively high up, even if it was just on the second floor. So I'm going to throw that out there, right? Even if it doesn't seem like that far of a jump, like, there is still a good chance you are going to break some bone in your body. And if you're truly in that situation, trying to flee the police again, by the time you hit the ground on impact from the second floor, how the hell are you even able to, how are you going to move? How are you going to stick the landing? Can you even guarantee that you're going to do that? Like, there's way too much that goes into that. So again, thankfully his senses came to him, and he just decided, okay, I'll just take it on the chin, and I'll just turn myself in. So yeah, there's a follow-up there. And again, hopefully you get more clarity from the situation overall. I'll definitely be on it, and I guess the next mention of it would be in the next overall video for developments, I would say. Although I definitely could have looked into this more as well. Essentially, another follow-up. Mark Sanchez's trial got moved back yet again, which is not surprising given all that had been discussed about it earlier on, with the potential for this to continue to move back. And again, I'm like, at some point, you gotta resolve the situation. And so, like, man, even if certain things are going down, like, you would want to get that underway. Because again, the longer that you try to stall this out, I don't know, even, like, yes, Mark Sanchez is dealing with his own matter in the situation. But, bro, we literally have a man who is 70 suffering all those fucking marks on his body as a result of what Mark Sanchez allegedly did. And all I'm saying is, the longer you wait on this, the longer you force him to wait for him to get his own due in this matter and his family to get more clarity on the situation. Like, in the event that Mark Sanchez is found guilty of this stuff, what the hell do you call yourself doing? Trying to constantly stall this thing out and trying to get him in the best possible light. Especially if the situation is as ugly as was reported to have been. There's no need for all that. Yes, you want both of them, and granted, again, Toll is going to have a much more difficult time doing that with the extent of his injuries and his age. They are both dealing with them. But at some point, sooner rather than later, you gotta get him in court. You have to resolve this matter. Like, it's just, you can't keep letting this linger on the entire time. You just can't. The Colts would place Charvarius Ward on IR to add yet another injury to their docket, unfortunately. And for the NFL, the collective would approve an investment in a pro flag football league, I should say, just yesterday. As this quote states, NFL clubs voted yesterday, at a virtual December league meeting to support financially the development and launch of a professional flag football league. This landmark decision authorizes 32 Equity, the league's collective investment vehicle, to enter into an agreement with a partner to operate a professional flag football league and invest up to $32 million in that league. The NFL's commitment reflects a long-term effort to support flag football in all forms as it continues to grow and evolve. End quote. And I mean, honestly, like, even with everything else being mentioned here, like, that is the crux of the matter. I want you to understand, like, when they say that they are truly trying to expand this overall effort to make flag football a commodity around the world, they mean it. They mean it. I mean, hell, they had a different event earlier in the year where they had, I guess, U17 and I guess different youth teams of flag football players facing off at a different NFL event. It might have been at the Pro Bowl. Like, yo, it is just expanding all over the place. So I can understand that something like this was probably on the docket for them. And from their perspective, it probably isn't even all that surprising. But it just goes to show you how massive it is instantly becoming. I mean, you are getting a pro league here, and this is going in tandem with them having an Olympic game, essentially. So, hey, like, again, as I've said before, talking about it, like, if you are a person who thinks that you can thrive in flag football and it's attractive, because honestly, like, yes, you want the best of the best competing in any sport, but yo, flag football is such to where without you really having the same kind of physical demands, I should say, you don't have to worry too much about getting tackled. There might be a little less of a risk for injury. And hell, like, it's so appealing to where any person who's in a good enough condition can go out and play if they desire to. So that just makes it even more attractive. And this could end up potentially being a hit for those guys who want to continue to actually make a substantial career out of playing flag football. You have different stuff on a lower end taking place, and that is also with the NFL again continuing to expand their efforts for it around the world. But now to have a pro flag football league of their own to continue to have players rotate through over and over and over again and make for a pretty competitive aspect in time that can truly captivate an entire audience. It's going to be something special. Like, I mean, this quote literally says it all at the end. It is now flag football offered at a high school level in 38 states, and the sport continues to grow at a rapid pace at the collegiate level, with hundreds of colleges and universities across the country offering flag football programming, end quote. Again, attractive if you do not want the same kind of physical demand that the, tackle version of the sport in the pros would take in tax from you. So, I mean, hey, man, like, you just, at the end of the day, you have got to respect that. I can't lie. And then, for the last development here, at least with what I see, the Ravens would sign their D-tackle and Travis Jones to a 3-year, $40.5 million contract extension. You have to give him credit, first of all, as a guy who's been more of a complimentary piece. He's had to step up massive this year for them in relief for Justin Madubuike, who is still on IR, still out with his injury this season. He's putting together a solid enough performance with 2 pass deflections, a fumble recovery, a forced fumble, tied for a career high mark of 1.5 sacks and 34 total tackles on the year, along with 6 TFLs and 5 quarterback hits. He's definitely been one of those guys. His listing as a nose tackle makes sense. For him to be 6'4", 341, he certainly holds down his effort there. And at this point, if you are the Ravens, you really do have to take value in that because you aren't getting that everywhere. You just aren't. Right? So, I don't really have a problem with this move. It's a decent enough deal for him. It's not like he's in a situation where he's getting overpaid at all or anything like that. It's right in the sweet spot. And, that'll definitely at least keep a solid rotational piece in for the team. He's still fairly young. So, I mean, hey, man. There you go. And I guess for some of what I'm seeing through Fox, there are different, a few other injury updates here. Devontae Adams was rehabbing in today's practice with a hamstring injury. Xavier Weaver is also dealing with a hamstring injury and wasn't participating today. Jeremy Chin was limited with a back injury in practice today. And also, I guess to cap this off, with more freaky shit from the AFC North. P.J. Watt is now apparently, per multiple NFL insiders, dealing with a lung or some kind of lung issue that is currently getting checked out at this point because they don't know what's going on. Like, they've just reported a number of different things about it. And ultimately, Watts also had to be in the hospital getting this checked out. Now, you would hope in his case that it doesn't develop into anything more serious than that. Because, believe me, there are people who can get certainly all over the place when it comes to hearing about an injury of that kind. And you can jump to a number of different conclusions following hearing something like that. Yeah, discomfort in that area. Like, I would hope it's nothing worse than that. Seriously. So that's something that's still going to have to be monitored in time. Those are all the reports out there of it, essentially, just saying that, okay, he's currently hospitalized with this issue. We don't really know what else is transpiring with that right now. But we do hope that the next update or so that may come from that situation, because, again, that's just something you have to continue to monitor. Hopefully, you get positive news from there. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.